Welcome to the Gals Guide to the Galaxy podcast, where a group of gals gather for you one cool thing around our topic of the month. Is it ancient history? Is it breaking news? Is it safe for work? Well, that's up to each gal. All we know is that...
Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy night.
Welcome back. I'm Barb, and I'm joined by Leah, Bonnie, and Katie talking about our one cool working woman. Bonnie already told us about the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory Fire, and Katie just talked to us about Judith Love Cohen, an aerospace engineer. Before we dive back in, I want to get to know something random about our gal pals. I want to know, kind of dovetailing on what Katie said, if you can see it, you can be it. Did you have, in your career, a female mentor, or were you a mentor to a female kind of in your industry?
Dun, dun, dun. I know my first boss at the concession stand, I did not like her. She was very mean and very, she wanted to have underlings and stuff like that, so I didn't quite vibe. But later on in my film career, this was at the video store, Suncoast Video, because I'm just moving from basically, movie theater to rental video store to sell-through video store to making my own movies. This is the way that I did it. Kathy was my boss, and Kathy had the most amazing background that I had ever heard of a boss. So she was a Wiccan. She had an albino snake, and she was friends with the lady who wrote Interview with the Vampire, whose name just escaped me.
Anne Rice?
Anne Rice. Yeah. So, because Anne Rice, they both were they were both at Berkeley at the same time. Mm. So she had delicious tales about Anne Rice, and especially about, the erotica that Anne Rice wrote to, pay the bills and stuff like that.
I've read that.
Oh, my gosh.
Just throwing it out there.
I mean, I've just read Anne Rice, and that's already...
Yes. It's spicy, right? Exactly. So, Kathy was my boss at the video store, and she would teach me, how to deal with customers, and then also how to do the paperwork, and she was prepping me to be a store manager of the video store. But honestly, we would close the store, and it would be an hour after closing, and we're just talking about whatever. She gave me life advice. She taught me tarot. That's why she's, on my mind. So she taught me tarot. She taught me so many amazing things about being a woman in sales and being in retail, but also just being a well-rounded person.
Yeah.
So I think that quirkiness and that tell me stories about you is what I've kept with me in any job that I had, where I really wanted to know people's stories and be that kind of a mentor. Hey, this job sucks, and we all know it sucks at times. Every job sucks at times, but let me get to know about you. Let me hear what stories and adventures and stuff like that we can, actually have a cool place to be.
Very cool. Very cool.
That's me. Da, 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 da. I'm looking at Bonnie.
I'm looking at her too.
Katie's avoiding eye contact with me right now. So, yes.
I, everywhere I've worked has been very female populated.
Yeah. You're also kind of like a moth to a flame to that too. That's the kind of vibe, you know what I mean, that you're digging. Yeah.
Just soaking up all that feminism.
Yeah.
I started out being hostess.
Cracker Barrel days.
Trying to think of what it was after that. And then a long time in college, I worked at an animal boarding facility.
Yep.
There's a lot of ladies there. And then working framing now. A lot of ladies there.
Yeah.
And the library is surrounded by ladies. It's just been increasing.
The number of ladies around you. Yes.
I did have a boss at the animal care facility that everyone else is oh, she's so mean and whatever. And it's we hired a bunch of teenagers that didn't want to do their job, and their job was to play with puppies.
Oh my gosh.
I'm oh, come on.
How did you not want to do that job?
And it was just seasonally they would come in and they would leave. And everyone was always oh, I was well, I never had an issue with her because
you I did to play with puppies. Yeah.
I did my job. So
I
didn't have an issue with her.
See? Perfect. I like it. Katie, what about you? Dun, dun, dun.
Well, I feel like it's hard for me to pinpoint a certain person.
Yeah.
But I definitely like to learn and evolve. And if I can't do something, it's really hard for me. and I want to look to the person that I think can do it
Yeah.
to try
Yep.
to figure it
Yep.
out or try to figure it out on my own.
Yep.
And I kind of like to work very independently, so maybe that puts a little damper on having a mentor from others.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah,
Although I
fair.
know it's still possible.
Yeah.
But I'd say as far as just the profession of working in special education,
Mhm.
the influence there came solely from my mom, who spent, you know,
good.
44 years as a special education teacher. And when I was a young kid, I was going to volunteer at State Special Olympics with her. We had athletes staying at our house. So it was definitely like a world I felt really comfortable in because it had always been part of my world.
It's part of your world, yeah.
So then when I left college and didn't have a very clear trajectory on a career path for myself, it seemed like a very natural place to turn to. So I think she's definitely the reason I ended up where I am now. And then my current boss, I feel like one of her strongest attributes is something that's weakest in me, and that's communicating with others and kind of knowing the right professional thing to say.
Oh,
Because, you know, I'm basically a professional oversharer.
I like it, though. It's one of my favorite things about you.
Part of my job being answering the phone and speaking with other people
That could be a
and
hindrance.
talking to parents is
Sure.
not always the way we want to go
Right.
with that. So I've definitely learned a lot from her about that aspect, and she's just also a great person as far as respecting employee needs.
Nice.
And that's something
That's
I
awesome.
think has come to the forefront of conversations of how, you know, even when you roast 140 employees in a building versus when you won't approve their time off request, very different scenarios, but still the same motivation as a lack of respect for your
Right.
employees. And she
Yes.
definitely treats people well, and I think that's important, and I appreciate having
That's
a role model that treats people
Yeah.
really well.
That's really good.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, I dig it.
I like it that that you guys all talked about maybe not formal mentoring, but casual mentoring.
Yeah.
So these
Happenstance.
relationships, right? Whether it's with your mom or whether it's with coworkers, you've established those relationships where you learn, and you can also teach. Right? There's a share that comes along with that. So I've worked in IT for 30 years, in a lot of male dominated realms. So in the automotive industry, the utility industry, so lots of men in those roles. But I too seem to migrate to other women engineers or IT professionals, and we establish these long-term relationships. So today I had lunch with Chrissy, my girlfriend who I met when we worked at General Motors. And, she was fresh out of college, and I was all experienced with like 5 years under my belt by that
5
time.
whole years?
5 whole years.
Veteran.
So I taught Chrissy so much. No, I didn't. But we bonded and we learned from each other, and we continue to do that. So even over lunch, I'm retired, and she's kind of nearing, or at least has an eye on retirement and things like that. So we talk about now that transition from the working world to retirement. How do you keep yourself busy, and how do you feel like you're still a contributing member? So I just thought it was very interesting that, she calculated it actually today. We've known each other for 29 years. And so sometimes she's the teacher, sometimes I'm the teacher, but we continually have this, this mentoring and the sharing relationship over time. And I think that's really important for for everybody, but especially for working women, and especially depending on what area you're working in. So,
Yeah.
very interesting.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, who do you have for us, darling?
So
yes.
I have Reshma Saujani.
Ooh, yes.
And some of you may remember we did one of her books.
Yes, for book club.
For
Or
Gals Guides, hosted Women in Noblesville, their book
Yes.
club. So we spent a lot of time talking about this book. So that was my first introduction to her. But because I have an IT background, I really loved a charity that she started, a not-for-profit. So that's why I kind of started on that path. So that's who I'm going to share with you today.
I like it.
Reshma was born on November 18th, 1875.
1875?
I'm sorry, 1975.
Okay.
1975. So
And I'm like, she's an amazingly good-looking
well
woman
preserved.
for 1875.
Yeah,
I was gonna say,
1975.
I thought you were
Just making
talking.
me feel better with my date issues.
Dates are
of the
hard.
day.
I mean, don't
Yes.
get us started on math, but
Maybe
dates
not.
are pretty hard.
So compared to me, she's actually a youngin', right? She was born in Illinois, where her father worked as a mechanical engineer in a machine shop.
Ah,
However, her family is of Western Indian descent,
Gotcha.
and her parents had previously lived in Uganda,
oh, wow.
but they were expelled
I was going to say.
in 1972 by Idi Amin.
Oh, wow.
So the Amin regime
Was terrible.
horrible,
Mm-hmm.
and it was bloody.
Yeah.
And he was responsible for over 300,000 Ugandan deaths and the expulsion of hundreds of thousands of people from that country.
Mm-hmm.
And this was before he was overthrown in 1979.
Mhm.
Reshma indicated that her family, as refugees fleeing Uganda, were rejected by many countries before they were actually accepted into the U.S.
Oh.
When they came to the U.S., they settled in the Chicago area.
Mhm.
She teases that her mom and dad opened a map and threw a dart, and it landed in Chicago.
Fair.
Too bad it didn't land like in Southern California. They would have had much better weather. But Chicago is where they were. Due to their expulsion from Uganda, her parents especially were always very aware of the insecurity of refugees and migrants, and they were just always very sensitive to those causes, even in the U.S. As they settled in suburban Chicago, they found that they were one of the first Indian families to settle kind of in her neighborhood, and it led to Reshma being subjected to discrimination.
Oh.
It also led to her becoming kind of a community activist. As a freshman at the high school, she started an organization called PRISM, which was a student-led organization that focused on reducing discrimination throughout the student body.
Ooh,
She would
nice.
later state that this was kind of a defining moment for her and clearly established her desire for being involved in the community. Saujani attended the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, where she graduated in 1997 with majors in political science and speech communication, so a double major.
Nice.
With the help of student loans and income earned while working her way through college, she then went on to attend Harvard University's John F. Kennedy School of Government. And there she received a master's of public policy in 1999. She also attended Yale Law School,
Oh, wow.
where she received her Juris Doctorate in 2002. It took 3 attempts to get into Yale Law School, 3 attempts plus showing up at the dean's residential home, knocking on the door and saying, "You have to let me in."
Oh my gosh.
Nice.
Good
So
for her.
exactly. So she definitely had the drive.
Yeah.
Ugandan Indians have established themselves as one of the most driven, well-educated, and prosperous groups of refugees in the world.
Nice.
Richard T. Herman was a co-author to writing the book Immigrant Inc., and he indicates that nearly 3 of 4 Indian immigrants who are 24 or older hold a 4-year college degree, and family median household incomes were twice that when compared to U.S. citizens, kind of in the same space of their lives.
Gotcha.
They work
That's cool.
disproportionately as engineers, professors, doctors, IT professionals, and lawyers.
Nice.
So
Highly educated, highly
highly
motivated.
driven.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, to show up at your
Yeah.
dean's door,
I know, right?
like she was so young. She's
Mhm.
not from the U.S., and she didn't have a problem going and knocking on his door the 3rd time
love it.
saying, "You got to let me in."
Mhm.
And
This
it worked.
is on the to-do list.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Don't stand in my
Right.
way.
I'm
That's
getting
right.
this done.
You kind of get the impression at an early age, Katie, that
Yeah.
not a lot stood in her way.
Yeah.
So,
I dig it.
with such an impressive education, she was set up for success in the business world. She started out in the finance industry working as a lawyer. She was defending securities fraud cases, but also working asylum cases on a pro bono basis. So you
Aw,
can
a
see,
little give back.
right?
Yeah.
So she's got the business side, and then she's also kind of taking care of the peeps.
Yeah.
She quickly transitioned to working for securities and private equity firms, where she would be associate general counsel and deputy general counsel. She worked for, equity hedge funds and, investment groups. In September of 2015, Reshma was named to Fortune magazine's 40 Under 40 list. And at that time, she was making $225,000 a year.
Oh,
So she was really on the fast track, again, showing kind of that drive, that business acumen, and getting the work done and getting paid handsomely for that.
Yeah.
One company that she worked with while she was in kind of this finance business world, though, found itself embattled in scandal when the principal owner faced federal charges of bank fraud himself, to the tune of about $300 million.
This isn't one like Enron or anything.
It
like
was
that.
not any of the big ones like that.
Okay.
But I didn't recognize the name.
Gotcha.
Reshma denied knowing anything about that fraud.
Yeah.
And promptly left the company.
Right.
So, but she was very successful in her own right. During this time, two things were kind of, I think, going on in her head. She was starting to look into politics, and she was starting to look to more actively give back to the community. So those pro bono cases were one thing, but how can I do more?
Yeah.
Her parents were not allowed as Indians to participate in the Ugandan political process. But her dad did impress upon her the need to participate and be very active in U.S. politics. She quickly proved to be valuable in the Democratic circles that she embedded herself in. She was driving, right? So she was driving all this. She established South Asians for Kerry in 2004.
Look at that.
She worked as part of the National Finance Board for Hillary in 2008.
Yeah.
And this was after she already interned for Hillary's husband in his campaign. Following the primaries in 2008, she was named vice chair of the New York delegation at the 2008 Democratic National Convention. So vice chair, that all sounds that's just kind of a big deal, especially because she was so young. But her drive was really inserting her into kind of the political landscape.
Gotcha.
She was recognized as being kind of that influential member in New York City politics, and it landed her on yet another 40 under 40 list.
Yeah.
So a lot of people recognizing her, and she was definitely getting name recognition at that time.
Nice.
She decided to try her hand at politics more directly when she ran in the 2010 House elections for New York. She was the first Indian American woman to run for U.S. Congress.
Wow.
She ran on the idea of aligning Wall Street, where
Finance.
she worked, with Main Street, where she kind of envisioned that she came from, a more common area. Her work on Wall Street, though, did not really win her the common vote.
Right.
When she was recognized that Wall Street might be hurting her, she worked to distance herself from that persona, even cleansing her wiki page of some of the previous Wall Street references that she had put out there, or that whoever.
Not as Wall Street heavy on,
exactly.
the resume.
Trying to seem more like the more common person than the Wall Street person.
Yeah.
Which totally get that.
Yeah.
In the end, she lost to Democratic Representative Carolyn Maloney in the primaries.
Okay.
The silver lining to this, though, was name recognition.
Yeah.
And she started making some really good contacts in the high-tech world. Jack Dorsey of Twitter, Randy, Mark's sister, of Facebook.
Gotcha.
Chris Hughes of Facebook. He was also one of the co-founders.
Right.
And a lot of other execs in high-tech companies. So she was networking with that level.
Gotcha.
And she would later use these to her advantage.
Yeah.
During the campaign, she was out and about in the city. She was going to a lot of the schools in the areas. She became aware of the gender disparity, especially in tech, in STEM, and in computing specifically. She would use the contacts that she made, those high-tech people that she knew, to move forward several initiatives for girls and women. Her biggest initiative was to start Girls Who Code.
Yay!
Yes. Reshma believed that schools along her campaign route lacked female representation in computer science classes. So she started this not-for-profit under the White House Science and Technology Initiative.
Yeah.
And they were running on 3 core values: bravery, sisterhood, and activism.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So if you read any of her books, you'll see these themes kind of carry through all of her books as well. Girls Who Code run programs during the academic year teaching the high school girls computing skills like programming, robotics, and web design. They also offer other things targeting that 12 to 17-year-old gal group. And then on into college, there's summer immersion programs, after-school clubs, and college clubs.
This makes sense why I see a lot of those programs in Chicago.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep,
Got it.
absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Because I've looked into some of them, and I'm like, they're all in Chicago, which is not too far away.
Yes.
So that makes sense now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, the summer immersion program has really caught on, and it's more widespread.
Yeah.
And they're based in 80 technology companies across the U.S., and they hit the big ones like Facebook, Twitter, and Microsoft and others.
Nice.
And the companies offer mentorship programs. So that's one of the reasons I asked that question. And it matches girls in the camp with women in the companies to establish long-term mentoring relationships.
Back to that, if you can see it, you can be it kind of thing too.
Exactly.
Yeah. Nice.
Exactly. The core curriculum kind of surrounds still the technology piece of it. So they're learning things like web design, HTML programming, Java, JavaScript programming, and those kinds of things.
Raspberry Pi. Sorry. I'm just kidding.
Rhubarb pie.
Exactly.
I like rhubarb pie. The program ends, that summer immersion program ends with a project showcase where, the gals get to show what they've done and what they've developed. And then there's a graduation ceremony. Yay. But the goal is kind of that long-term involvement.
What
commitment.
can you do with this?
Yep.
Yeah. Oh,
Yep.
Nice.
Other partnerships, and I found this really, really interesting, established with companies like Dell and Accenture. Okay, that makes sense. That those are definitely high-tech companies. TikTok. Okay, that's a high-tech company too. American Girl Doll.
Oh!
Doja Cat.
Doja Cat!
Olay.
Oh, all right.
And then also places like Raytheon.
Oh, okay.
So, but it was like a who's who of networking. So she's definitely strengthened her relationship with the tech world, but also the non-tech world.
Yeah.
And the cross-marketing with these companies alone, they've reached so many girls and women through their programming. So that's been very cool.
Nice.
In 2022, Girls Who Code led a concentrated effort to expand into India, complementing its existing operations in the U.S., Canada, and the U.K.
Nice.
So that was Reshma kind of coming full circle to her heritage, kind of giving back into India. And it seems like it's really taken off there. India is kind of a hotbed of tech too. Even when I was more involved in the tech side, when I worked at GM, we had partnerships with organizations over there too. Girls Who Code also encouraged young girls to become active in their communities and represent their causes more publicly.
Yeah.
They started a digital march called March for Sisterhood. And it called for girls, women, and allies to post themselves on social media marching for a cause that they believed in. So it's not only support it, but it's publicly support it and, get it out there. That I'm not talking to them.
No, but also to give them a voice.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And again, make others feel that they're not alone in their march. So marching together. So
nice.
In 2023, they launched mentoring cores. Again, so this is the follow-up of the successful mentoring programs that they'd already established. But it matches high school students then with college gals for long-term mentorship to kind of bridge that gap. So many of the girls who are going into technology might not have anyone in their families who have gone on to college. So somebody that can bridge that gap for them.
Yeah.
I was one of the first to go to college, in my family, and I was going in computer science. So it was kind of a stretch for my family. Something like that would have been wonderful for me.
Yeah.
Somebody to ask questions to.
Right. Especially seeing how it's such a evolving field
Oh
so
my gosh.
fast.
Yes. Yes, definitely. Definitely. According to the organization's website, there are approximately 300,000 alumni who have completed their programming.
Wow.
They've reached over 500,000 girls in total. So they've, whether it's books or, one-off programs, but 500,000 girls have been touched by this.
Nice.
Alumni include Andrea Gonzalez and Sophie Hauser.
Okay.
Sound any familiar?
A little bit.
They're creators of a video game called the Tampon Run.
Nice.
The Tampon Run.
And I loved this as a little tidbit.
Adorbs.
This game was all about destigmatizing menstruation.
Yeah. Oh, I dig it. Yeah.
Nice.
The player controls a character who runs through all the levels.
Yeah.
And guess what they throw at their enemies?
Tampons.
Tampons.
Sweet.
I'm like, I love this. I love this.
Beautiful.
Beautiful. The Girls Who Code organization has sponsored, again, through all their relationships, but multi-million-dollar contributions from organizations like AOL, Google, and Microsoft, AT&T. That mentoring course is sponsored specifically by MetLife, and MetLife has pledged $3 million in awards over 3 years to help get this off the ground. So
neat.
There's lots of successful money coming in and relationships.
investing in the girls and yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, that's
So
amazing.
recently, Saujani announced that she would be stepping down from her role as CEO. Succeeding her was Dr. Tarika Barrett, the company's former COO.
Okay.
Before joining Girls Who Code, Barrett worked for New York City's Department of Education, where she assisted in the design of the city's first school dedicated to software engineering.
Oh,
So a good
cool.
fit
A
into
teacher.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. In an interview with Forbes, Saujani indicated the importance of change, especially change at the management levels.
Mhm.
That the change leads to additional innovation, and it was something that she was embracing. So it was a good transition, and she was fully on board with that.
Neat.
During the height of her efforts with Girls Who Code, Reshma published several books, some directly in support of coding and driving girls to code, others in support of her thoughts and ideas on leadership, activism, living your bold, true self. That came across. Brave Not Perfect is still one of my favorite books that we had done.
Yeah.
It talks about, and she talks about this in her podcast too, how we as women, we don't take risks in our personal lives and our professional lives
Right.
due to fear. And the fear takes a toll on our bodies, on our minds, and on our accomplishments. It really holds us back. So she's encouraging the girls at a very young age to live boldly, try things out, those kinds of things.
Make mistakes. Who cares? Learn from them.
Yes.
Do something new.
She's all about, taking the risk and making mistakes and then learning from it and moving on.
Yeah.
She actually says in one of the interviews that I read that her congressional loss really led directly to her writing and her launching Girls Who Code. And she indicates that if she would have won that congressional race, her life would have gone in a different tangent. And she probably, she may have written eventually.
Right. Sure.
But she wouldn't have had the time and the energy to write the books now and to launch Girls Who Code.
Yeah.
And this has touched so many. So that loss was actually
serendipitous almost to a certain extent. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, you know how I get involved in all these tangents. This is one of my tangents. So she wrote these books for the Girls Who Code.
Yep.
The goal of the books is to get girls in STEM.
Yeah.
4 of the books were banned from Central York School District in Pennsylvania. These are books written to increase girls in technology.
Right.
I can't imagine why we would need to ban these books.
Right.
Coincidentally, these books were also on a resource list created by the district's diversity committee.
Right.
It seems so odd that cross-referencing banned books or censored books with diversity causes seems to always suggest an alignment that is denied by those who are censoring.
Right. Because especially when you have that activism quotient, and if you have women of color, girls of color, and activism, learning something that, let's just say, not everybody understands, and it scares white folk.
Yes. I think Saujani scares a lot of white folk.
Right. But you know what? Because she's smart.
Yes.
Amazing.
Saujani did say that the banning was linked to the Moms for Liberty group.
There it is.
So now the Moms
I would have bet money on it.
The Moms for Liberty group
Yeah.
says that the group is only concerned with banning material that would give their children easy access to sexually explicit content and pornography.
What?
I am really not
the
so
code?
sure
The ones and zeros?
that sexually explicit
sexy.
content and pornography
Those
were
triangles?
found
They
in
do call it binary.
Binary.
I think Bonnie's hit on
Just see what you did there.
So luckily, they were only on the ban list for about 10 or 11 months. And then the Central York School District saw it in their wisdom to put the books back on the shelf.
Yay!
Wow.
If more places could do that,
Right.
that would be great.
Right. I mean, like, where did you have any?
Fishers, Indiana.
But-
That's
there
actually
you
what
go.
I
All
meant.
right, that's
Fishers,
good.
Indiana. Ask John
There
Grant.
was so much alignment when I was reading this, and my mouth kept dropping open further and
You're like,
further. What the
Banning
heck?
a coding book?
Banning
Uh-huh.
a coding book?
Yeah.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes, smart women of
Vestiges.
color scare people.
Well, I mean, always, and they should.
And they should.
In
And
the
I'm glad they do.
Yes, exactly.
Reshma continues to stay active, working on behalf of women and girls. So post-COVID, she advocated that the pandemic hit working women especially hard.
Yeah.
She proposed the Marshall Plan for Moms and asked that Congress and the White House recognize and support working mothers, specifically by implementing policies focusing on robust paid leave,
Nice.
childcare, raising the federal minimum wage,
Yes.
and providing mental health support for mothers.
Oh,
Nice.
that's amazing.
So Marshall Plan for Moms evolved into Moms First. So
Okay.
if you've heard of Moms First, it's
I
now a
have not.
national nonprofit organization dedicated to advancing women's economic freedom.
Nice.
So
Different than Moms for Liberty, then.
a little, slightly,
Okay.
yeah, a little
Little less racist. Got it.
little different. Reshma is married with 2 kids, and she's a practicing Hindu. Her husband is an entrepreneur and now works in venture capitalism. She continues to build her legacy, and she keeps popping on these lists. So Fortune World's Greatest Leaders,
Ooh.
Fortune 40 Under 40, which
Yeah.
we mentioned,
Mhm.
the Wall Street Journal Magazine Innovator of the Year,
Ah.
Forbes' Most Powerful Women Changing the World,
Yes.
and Fast Company's 100 Most Creative People, among others.
Nice.
She was also the winner of the Harold W. McGraw Jr. Prize in Education. So that celebrates innovation, inspiration, and impact specifically in education. Girls Who Code was recognized in 2019 as the most innovative nonprofit by Fast Company. They look for companies who make an impact on industry and culture. So I think that really
Nice.
kind of sums up what she was trying to do. And she's done a nice job of merging
there,
the two.
yeah.
So her legacy continues to grow. We teased offline that,
Yeah.
she's in her 40s and she's made a huge impact. And we hope that
Imagine
continues.
what more she's going to do.
Yes, yes. Her latest book was Pay Up, The Future of Women in Work.
Nice.
And that's all about, again, pay equity.
Yeah.
And that was published in 2022, but we'll expect lots more
Oh,
things
yeah.
from her.
How many books has she written?
So I think,
Because like Girls Who Code,
yeah, I think
for
there's
the main one, but then there's also novelizations.
yes.
Yeah, there's several Girls Who Code books.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there are 4 Girl Who Codes book, plus she's written her own, more adult-focused novels. So I think she's probably in the 6 to 8 realm
Amazing.
where she's at. And again,
Yeah,
very
more to come.
successful at such a young age, very driven, and can't wait to see where she goes
I
next.
know, right? Oh, that's amazing.
So there you go.
I like
Any
it.
questions?
We had, I don't know if Bonnie and Katie remember in our 5-year plan,
Mm-hmm.
remember how we had this dream that Gals Guide would have an app? And we wanted that the app would maybe be a Girls Who Code project.
Oh, fun.
That was like one of our, we haven't, I don't even know if we applied for a grant to try
We
it.
did.
Okay. But it's something that's always been kind of on that list.
I love
Just
that.
the idea of tying into that organization and
So if we
what
continue,
we do and what they do. Yeah.
if we continue with that, I want to get the girls who wrote Tampon Run
Yes!
to, I think.
That'd be amazing.
I think
just
I would.
downloaded it.
Did
Oh,
you?
did you really? Oh,
That's
I know what
awesome.
Bonnie's going to be doing
That's
tonight.
awesome. And maybe in our app they won't throw tampons. Maybe they'll just throw books.
I mean, I'm okay with either. I mean,
Maybe both.
a girl needs an arsenal of weaponry.
I think you're right. I like it.
So I'm okay with this.
I like it.
That is amazing.
Should I wrap us up?
I think so. Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Fantastic job.
Well, that wraps it up for us this week. Join us next week for another Cool Woman of History as Gals Guide podcast continues. Thanks for listening.
For show notes, links, and images from this week's show, visit galsguide.org. Want exclusive stuff like deleted bits and major bloopers? Become a Gals Guide patron today. Thanks for listening.